Big Ten football media days begin Tuesday in Las Vegas. I'm heading out there. So is Eliot Clough, and he joins us today breaking down all things Iowa football on this Locked On Hawkeyes.
You are Locked On Hawkeyes, your daily podcast on the Iowa Hawkeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I'm Trent Condon, and this is the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. We're available wherever you find podcasts. You can also watch us on YouTube. Make sure you hit the subscribe button while you're watching. Helps us get in front of more Hawkeye fans. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Well, a lot of Big Ten talk here and a lot of Iowa Hawkeye talk. We're going to get into it. In fact, we're going to open up the show today with a guest. Eliot Clough joins us from 24/7 Sports, HawkeyeInsider.com. Eliot, good to see you and good to talk to you once again as you're going to be making your way out to Vegas. I'm heading out there Monday. You'll be out there Wednesday, and the Hawkeyes go on Thursday. How you been doing?
I'm good, Trent. I mentioned it a little bit before we started recording, but got engaged this week. So a lot of busy stuff going on, and I guess last week now when this will air. But yeah, lots of busy stuff. Starting the 2 new jobs. I've had family this last weekend here in where I live in Cedar Rapids, and obviously going out to Las Vegas here soon. So lots of stuff, lots of good stuff, but yeah, lots of stuff at the same time. So been pretty busy rather.
Well, congratulations. When I proposed to my now wife, I did not know that you're supposed to do, some people take a trip right afterwards. I got an RV and I made my way out to the Iowa Penn State game back in, I think it was 2011. So nice. Yeah, that was frowned upon apparently at the time. I didn't know. And well, hopefully I only have to do it once, but here we are, 13 years later and still married. So I make many mistakes, but that one wasn't a too big one. And now you're going to Vegas. So hopefully everything's good at home.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I will be, if Rachel's out there listening, I will be at media days and I will be in my hotel room. That will be it.
Working hard. Well, there's a lot to talk about here as we get ready for it. We'll get our first updated look at the depth chart. That's always interesting to see. I understand it's Kirk Ferentz, right? You never want to read too much into it, but I think it gives us a glimpse and something that we can overreact to, which we always do. That's going to be intriguing to see what it is. What are the craziest things? I want to talk to Kirk about what he does in Las Vegas. I mean, you talk about a guy that is just completely out of his element. Kirk Ferentz in Las Vegas, that does not seem like a match made in heaven.
Right. Yeah, that'll be. I will be looking forward to hearing what he's doing in Vegas. He seems like a in and out kind of guy, just like in and then gets the job done, heads back to Iowa City, goes back to the office, goes back to the facility. Seems like that's what he's doing. But you mentioned the depth chart. Kirk actually said in the spring that he didn't think they were gonna release a depth chart in the summer.
Ooh.
Just he said all it does is piss off parents. So
I
hope we
that.
still get one.
That, yeah.
But yeah. So here's hoping. It's great content for us, if anything, right?
Yes.
So here's hoping.
No doubt. There's a couple of position battles when we get to August camp that are going to be incredibly important, and maybe nothing more important than who's going to win that left tackle. I mean, you feel good. Jennings Dunker coming off the surgery that he had back in the spring. He's going to hit the ground running. Logan Jones, obviously, in the middle. We saw Bo Stevens, even a year ago, Pieper, and how much bigger he is, and seeing him at the Hill Toss days, winning it once again. But that left tackle position, if this offensive line is going to be at an elite level, they have to figure that out. Be it Trevor Lauk, be it Jack Doetzler, or the transfer coming in from Ferris State and Bryce George. Have you heard anything definitive or one way, or has maybe you leaning one way or the other of who ultimately is going to win that left tackle job?
I have spoken to multiple sources about this, and we talked about it on Hawkeye Insider, and right now, it's a competition. There is no clear leader, and just going by my gut. Right now, I feel like it would be Lauk because he's the 4-star. He's the guy probably with higher potential. He's the guy that is entering his 3rd year and was a highly touted recruit. Right about that time, that 3rd year, if you're a highly touted guy, you should probably be in the rotation. And additionally, He's younger. That way you can get more years out of him. Granted, I don't know if they defer to older guys. So maybe you go Dotzler because he's been with the program for so long. But to me, it might, if they had to play right now, I think it would be Lauk. Also because he took those reps in the spring. Dotzler was at right tackle while Dunker was out. Bryce George, I mean, it's one thing to come from D2. It's one thing to come from D2 as a right tackle and be forced to play left tackle at the Power 4 level in the Big Ten. Like it's just different. At the same time, they brought him in for a reason, right? Whether it's depth or whether it's starting, they brought him in for a reason. And so I think it could be any of them right now. From what I've been told, Lauk and Dotzler have taken a step forward. I mean, I'd love to tell you I know who it is, but like it's an open competition going into camp. Like I said, if they had to play right now, I think it'd be Lauk. But maybe by season start, it's George. I mean, maybe it's a competition through the season. Like, I mean, who's to say? There's just no bona fide guy at that position like you had in Mason Richmond the last few years. And I mean, it's not like he was all Big Ten, all American or anything like that, but he was your left tackle. And you don't have that this season. And it's like arguably the most important position in football. And so you could look at the competition and say, well, nobody's separating themselves, or you could look at it and say, wow, these guys are really all fighting for this spot. So, you one way had glass half full, glass half empty. But I'm not sure. I don't think it's Dotzler at the end of the day. I would probably put it on Lauk or George, but I could be completely wrong, right? So we'll see how it goes.
Want to stay on the offense with you and go to the wide receiver group. We know Jacob Gill, dependable, solid. He can play a multitude of different positions in that different receiver room, and you love that about Jacob Gill. Reese Vander Zee, you're hoping for a healthy season out of him after the way he exploded onto the scene a year ago. But out of that next tier of guy, after those two, Seth Anderson, if healthy, right? That's his full name now, Seth Anderson, if healthy. And we'll see if Little Flipper is able to do it this season. Weegan, they want to use him more. We continue to hear, and that was one of the reasons that he came back, is he thinks he's going to be more involved in the offense. They bring in Sam Phillips from the transfer portal, incredibly fast and also incredibly short. And KJ Parker has kind of been maybe that buzz guy of the summer that we continue to hear every single time. Even a Dayton Howard, and Jarrett Bowie, those kind of guys. Out of that group of guys, after Gill and after Vander Zee, is there a guy or two that you're looking at and you believe is really going to take a big step forward this year and is going to be an important part of that wide receiver room?
That is a really good question because, like you said, we saw the potential with RVZ when he was healthy last year. Jacob Gill, a solid guy, he's going to catch the ball, was pretty much the default, the safety valve for Brendan Sullivan, and even Cade McNamara when Cade was playing. It's such a, I feel so wrong calling the wide receiver group at Iowa deep. Like, to tell you the truth, it doesn't feel right. And it makes me feel like, somebody's going to clip this and I'm going to look stupid in 6 months or whatever it is. And I look at them, and then for me right now, I look at Sam Phillips, but there's two names that you didn't even mention, and Jarrett Bowie and Dayton Howard, who flashed last year, right? Like, it could be any and all six of the other guys that are playable that have a great game, that string together a few games. But I do think it's going to be Gill and RVZ as the top most productive guys. But I do believe in Sam Phillips too. I mean, he's a guy that could play the X position because of his speed. He could play the slot. He could play the Z. He's just a playmaker. He's got great hands. He's not just a speed guy. He's not just make a play in the open field. He can make a catch on a deep route, and make a contested catch too. I would lean his way. It's tough, if I had to pick a breakout candidate in the group, I have to lean KJ Parker, honestly, because he didn't play last year, one. And two, everything I've heard from behind the scenes, he's phenomenal ball skills, right? It's his ability to make plays in the open field. He is really a true Z in that he can do so many different things as a wide receiver. So I would probably lean Phillips and Parker, but man, it's so difficult to discount the rest of that group in Caden Weegan, in Jarrett Bowie, in Dayton Howard. And you even go down and Seth Anderson, if he can make it through the whole season healthy. And you even go down to the freshman in Terrence Smith, who's the ninth guy effectively on the depth chart when you look at it. And he had some really great plays that he showed on film. Needs to put a few different things together. Really a basketball player who turned out to be a good football player, if I had to, label him as such. But it's a deep group. I mean, there are just a ton of guys that I could see making an impact. It's not the wide receiver group of 23, where it was basically Nico Ragaini and everybody else. And, it's just not that way anymore.
Good place to be, no doubt about it. Let's talk a little defense when we come back. Eliot Clough is joining us from HawkeyeInsider.com. We'll get a look at the defense, some of the storylines Eliot's going to be chasing as well out in Las Vegas for Big Ten Football Media Days. We'll do that as we continue on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. As a small business owner, I understand you got finances all kinds of different places, and trying to do it with your family, with your wife, it can be difficult. Monarch Money can help you put it all together. If you got a goal, maybe you're looking for that vacation, maybe you're looking to travel with the Hawkeyes to their bowl game, whatever it may be, you can track your spending and set goals right there on the Monarch app. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com with the code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. monarchmoney.com. Trent Condon, Eliot Clough back with you on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for being with us and making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. Eliot, let's jump over to a little defense in the conversation. And I guess linebacker is probably the place to go. It's just such a weird year. You got all the veterans, the guys that waited their turn. I mean, Jaden Harrell, he could have had, not his pick of the litter, but that guy could have gone someplace a season ago and probably started half the FBS programs out there. But he wanted to stick around. He wanted to be a Hawkeye for his final season. He's not alone. You got Carson Shire out there, a couple of other veterans that have been around a long time. And yet here comes this young group of linebackers. And we keep hearing about Preston Reese in the weight room and what he's doing, and Weisskopf and that group of three that comes in. So it's going to be an interesting year, because I think very quickly, if these veterans don't show it right away, I wouldn't be surprised to see Phil Parker go youth if those older guys are struggling early.
And don't forget about Landon Van Keekeriks and Montgomery, Jaden Montgomery, in that second group of guys that of the two deeps. They really like Montgomery. Van Keekeriks, I think, if I'm remembering right, made a big play on a kickoff against Missouri. Yeah, that big hit. And a guy that is a Northwest Iowa guy, comes from up there. And I mean, those guys, we're talking about Cooper DeJean, we're talking about Reese Vandersee, we're talking about Zach Lutmer, right? So any of those guys could be part of the rotation. And some things that I've heard behind the scenes too is that it could be linebacker by committee. Like, they could all play. It's just, the one thing that a lot of fans and people around the program will say is, they've had Jack Campbell, they've had Jay Higgins, they've had Josie Jewell, it just goes on and on and on and on. And I'm not here to say that Jaden Harrell isn't that or won't be that, but to have that expectation for a guy who had to sit behind Jay Higgins for it's just not fair. Like, he's just not going to be Jack Campbell, he's not going to be Jay Higgins, who are All-Americans, some of the best linebackers in the country, the best linebacker in the country in Jack Campbell. So it's just not going to be the same, to put it frankly. But and we also saw him against UCLA, and he struggled last year. The whole defense did, right? So you could take that one of two ways. But I don't know if I would put it in the concerned boat, because Seth Wallace and Phil Parker have just done a phenomenal job with linebackers, right? But because of that young group, Cam Buffington, Derek Weisskopf, Preston Reese, you named them, they're studs, man. They're going to be really good. They're going to be on special teams one way or another. Right? They're going to play this year as redshirt freshmen, but they might, you might have to push them onto the field, if anything, into that Leo spot. Like, Preston Reese might just get on the field, even though he doesn't know what he's doing, because he can make a play. And you could say the same thing about the other two. So, and it could be, that Jay Higgins mold rather of where he started at Leo and then moved over to Mike. So if I had to bet, it's going to be a conglomeration of guys playing those linebacker spots where Carson Shire is probably going to be the star of the group. And then Jaden Harrell, those guys play the majority of those snaps, but you see a lot more bodies there than you had however many years, the last however many years.
Want to jump to the defensive backfield. I believe in what we saw in the spring, that TJ Hall has taken that jump. And it's a story as old as time with Iowa football, guys that early in their career struggle. And by the time they go, I go way back to Bradley Fletcher, who was about as bad of a cornerback as I can remember seeing early in his career. And the dude played in the NFL for 7 years with the Eagles. He was outstanding, and he had a great senior season. It feels like TJ Hall is going to be that. But after him, Deshaun Lee, is there another jump forward for him? And then they go out and bring in Shahid Barros from South Dakota. Of those two, who do you believe is going to be the game one starter? Who's going to be starting opposite TJ Hall?
My pick is Barros, Shahid Barros. You mentioned that Deshaun Lee could have very well grown from spring to summer. I don't know that he is substantially better than what he was when he took over for Cooper DeJean when Cooper got hurt 2 years ago. Shahid Barros is probably what I've been told, like measurables, is the biggest guy in the room. Okay. And that's with TJ Hall in the room. Like that's a prototypical size of a corner. And he's coming in from the MVFC, which, so is Mark Gronowski, right? Like this is what I used to refer to it as when I was covering UNI is the SEC of the FCS. It is loaded. The MVFC, they produce NFL guys. They send teams to the national championship every year. If it's not North Dakota State, it's South Dakota State. If it's not South Dakota State, it's North Dakota State, right? And South Dakota and North Dakota both have great programs. UNI hasn't been, amazing in a while, but it's because that league is so freaking good. And when you look at Shahid Barros, his last year there, or might have been a couple years ago, he had 2 picks that season. I might have had more than that, but 2 on 2 future Power 4 quarterbacks in Mark Gronowski and then Tommy Schuster from North Dakota. So he's making plays at that level. 1, 2, South Dakota, if not an exact same defense as Iowa, they run an incredibly similar defense to Iowa. So this is like a plug and play sort of scenario. Final year, he's earned his spot to move up. Actually, he was coached by Jason Manson, who was the player director of player development. Just recently got a promotion within the program, and has been working with quarterbacks. He coached him at St. Thomas More in Connecticut, which is kind of cool. I'm sure that's how that at least partially how that materialized. But and this is just it's a story that culminates in this, in my opinion. I really do think he leapfrogs Deshaun, but Deshaun's he's going to play. Right. It's not like he's going to be completely folded out of the rotation. I just don't see, he could be very well be just a slot corner there too. But with the size, with the experience in the MVFC, which again, you cannot bat your eyes at, that is damn good football. And the fact that, Iowa needs help, and they went out and got him for a reason. I do think it's Barros. I think it's Barros that starts.
Special teams question for you. So we know Caden Weegen's going to be back there returning punts, returning kicks, but a year ago, it was Max White that was back there with him in that 2 returner setup that they had on kick returns. Well, Max White is no longer there. So somebody else is going to be back there. Now, my mind immediately goes to Brevin Dahl, who battled injuries during this spring, but you talk about a speedster. He definitely has that. Do you know, because I don't think there was anything listed on the depth chart, at least memory doesn't serve going back, who would be some of those candidates to be back there with Weegen and kick returns?
So TJ Hall was second team punt returner during the spring. Or sorry, not TJ Hall, TJ Washington.
Oh, okay.
Very different. Sorry. TJ Washington on the running back depth chart. He was back there returning punts. If I had to guess, it's going to be him back there too. Otherwise, going down a list of names off the top of my head, you mentioned Brevin Dahl because of that pure speed. And they do like to go to running backs. There's a reason Max White was back there. There's a reason it was Caleb Johnson before that. So my choice would be TJ Washington, because he is that just a big play waiting to happen kind of guy. He's not, pure straight line speed. It's the shiftiness. It's the ability to, slip through a tackle. So he would be a guy that I would see. You mentioned Brevin Dahl. Xavier Wampa is a guy that's, worked through some of that stuff, return punts, at least in practice, and in pregame. But I mean, you throw in Jalen Watson in there too. I mean, that dude is a big play waiting to happen as well. There's a reason he was my favorite in that 24 class. I really liked him coming out of Central Catholic in Toledo, even though he's just a 3-star and a converted wide receiver. But that's a name I would throw in there as well. I mean, Zach Lutmer is a name that they've mentioned on special teams too. He's a guy that does really good things with the football in his hands. It's the thing about all of those. Nathan McNeil, one more. That freshman, I do think he redshirts this year just because of the depth of the running back group. But if he does not, if he burns it, or if he plays those 4 games, could be on special teams. I told you this before. I had a source call him lightning in a bottle, right? And I mean, we've seen that a little bit. And you can see it on his high school tape. I don't know how Iowa was his only Power 4 offer. He's just slippery. He's quick. So those are names that I think of. I do ultimately think it's going to be TJ Washington that takes that spot, because what they're looking for is a guy that can make big plays. And on top of that, when you have such a loaded running back room and such a deep running back room, you got to find ways to ingratiate these guys in other parts of the game, because it's hard to keep all those people happy, right? And I mean, and TJ's a really good football player, and the more the ball is in his hands, the better. So you get the ball to him in space like that, and he's going to have an opportunity to make a play every time. So that's why I lean Washington.
Eliot, we'll get you out on this, and just go back to January, before Mark Gronowski became a Hawkeye, before we even knew that he was going to be in the portal. My optimism for this team was pretty low. I thought with the schedule that they had this year, bowl eligibility would probably be a successful year. 7-5 might have been the top end of things. And maybe it's just because we talk about, and you write about, the Hawkeyes day in and day out. You get to know the guys, and you start to kind of pump yourself up a little bit because of that, because you get to know the names so much better. But my optimism is a lot higher than I ever anticipated it was going to be for this team. How optimistic are you that this team can have a successful season, can surprise and be 9-3, 10-2 good? Where do you kind of sit on that front?
So we talked about this on a recent episode of Swarmcast, Dave, Sean, and I. And I think an 8-4 season is where you got to be happy with that, just by the fact of the schedule being brutal.
Yeah.
Indiana, Penn State, Oregon, all in the playoffs last year. And you can't discount Iowa State. Obviously, you can't discount Minnesota after what happened a few years ago in Kinnick. And I mean, I'd have to look at the rest of the schedule, but I mean, you going out to Rutgers, that's a trip. Going out to USC, California has never been good to Kirk Ferentz, or the Iowa football program, period. But it's just a gauntlet, right? I would say if everything falls right, 10-2 is the ceiling, because you're going to lose at least one of Penn State, Oregon. You just are. Those programs are too good, too much talent, too well coached, right? Like Oregon, it's just a different athlete. Like you can love the farm kids from the Midwest and think it's awesome to develop them into Jennings Dunker, right? But it's just another tier of athlete that they're getting at programs like Oregon and Penn State. So it's gonna be tough to beat one, let alone two of those programs. And I mean, Iowa has had a string of losses that shouldn't have been losses. So that's a factor in there too. I think the threshold's probably going to be 7-5, 8-4 for the regular season. Sorry to squash your optimism, but
nope. I completely understand it. And then there's some days that I wake up and say this team's gonna go 6-6 and lose some of those tosses, because there's so many in there, and there's so many of those games that can go the other. They're not winning on the West Coast. We know this. So there's a loss. And you mentioned they're not sweeping both Oregon and Penn State, even at Kinnick Stadium. And then you start, one goes this way. And finally, maybe Wisconsin figured out, let's go back to smash mouth football. That's on the road. And on and on and on and go the other way. Around in circles we go. But hey, we'll have football coming up here in about a month, and that sounds pretty good. Eliot Clough joining us from 24/7 Sports. Eliot, as mentioned, you're going to be out there at Big Ten Football Media Days. What are you going to be chasing, and what can we look forward to this week at 24/7?
One thing that I absolutely want to learn more about is Cohen Entringer. He's a great quote. I am really excited about him in that defensive back group, that trio of him, Zach Lutmer, and Xavier Wampa moving over to free safety. Absolutely covering him. Talking to Logan Jones about the snap with Mark Gronowski because he had previously stubbed Cade McNamara's finger. So hopefully that's not happening to Mark at this point in time. And I want to learn about Ethan Herkett and what he's seen on that defensive line, because they might be the most lethal group out of the entire defensive the entire defense. I mean, they've got Llewellyn, they've got him, they've got Aaron Graves, it's just I've heard a lot of good things about Bryce Hawthorne, Yosei Epinesa is coming in, right? Like it's just a lot of things to follow. And of course, we'll have all of that covered over at Hawkeye Insider. So stay tuned. And we got more than that coming this week too. So I'm very excited about this week, and yeah, definitely join us.
I appreciate it, Eliot. We'll see you out there in Las Vegas.
Thanks, Trent.
All right, Eliot Clough joining us from HawkeyeInsider.com. Appreciate his time as always. Speaking of that, what are we chasing ourselves next week? We'll talk about that. Vegas, baby. When we come back, it's the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Trent Condon back with you one final time on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. As always, thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. And make sure you hit subscribe if you're watching us on YouTube. If you're listening on the audio side, 5-star reviews and a big thank you to everydayers with us each and every day. Couldn't do it with all of you out there. As we put a cap on things, Las Vegas. I think Eliot brought up a couple of good points, some things that'll be interested. I love talking about the players, about some of the other players. I think you get insight that you always don't get from the coaches. So that's going to be something that I'm certainly going to be asking the three guys that are going to be there for the Hawkeyes. I mentioned Kirk. I want to find out about him in Vegas. I don't know why. It's incredibly intriguing to me. It'll be a little silly, but we can have a little fun out there on top of it. And just getting his perspective on this changing landscape in college football. He gets the reputation as this stodgy old guy that is unwilling to change, but we have seen change. We have seen evolution with this program, and you see what's happened with Tim Lester, and we'll see if they can take another step offensively this year. But changing, what they do in the blocking scheme, and changing something that has been the backbone of Iowa football, and his willingness, to do that 25 years into the program, and as we get ready for year number 27, and how different things could look this season for the Iowa football team. So a lot to chase down, a lot to be, again, I'll be there with you each and every day with podcasts. Also had the radio show out there. You can check that out on 106.3 KXNO and the Iowa Sports Radio Network. You can hear me each weekday from noon to 2 Central Time, talking the world of sports, and a lot of Hawkeyes over there, along with the daily podcast here, Locked On Hawkeyes. That'll do it for today. Thanks for being with us and making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. We'll talk to you again from Las Vegas. Until then, go Hawks.